Hey, RetconRaider here. Well, once again, June was a very busy month for Phoenix Point. Between the new briefing, the convention appearances, the interviews, and official updates, there's a lot to talk about. We even got Backer Build 2, which was technically released in July, but it was so close to June that I might as well include it in this video. I've already put out a couple of videos focusing on things like Backer Build 2 and the briefing number 5, so this video will mainly be focused on covering everything else that we learned about Phoenix Point throughout June. That said, I suppose we should at least cover the basics, so let's take a moment to talk about Backer Build 2. This was the first major update to the public pre-alpha, and it included several new pieces of content, including new units, new weapons, new maps, and all sorts of minor tweaks and bug fixes to improve the overall experience. The new Backer build notably gives us our first real look at the Elite Technician class, a unit that will be exclusive to New Jericho, though it can also be unlocked by the Phoenix Project. This unit is surprisingly adept in battle, with a powerful melee attack that can stun opponents, as well as the ability to deploy an automated turret in combat. It can also actively support allies by healing crippled teammates or repairing damaged machinery, such as the newly implemented Armadillo APC. Of course, we've also been hearing about the Armadillo for quite some time now, but this is the first time we've actually gotten to see it in action. This heavily armored vehicle can quickly transport your entire squad across the battlefield, destroying almost any obstacle it runs into. In combat, it can ruthlessly crush enemies with a devastating ram attack, or it can pick them off from a distance with an armor-stripping Gauss turret. It's actually quite interesting to note that, aside from the Armadillo, Backer Build 2 also introduces several other new vehicles, including a few cars, a bus, and even one of New Jericho's supply trains. Unfortunately, these vehicles are all just intended for use as terrain objects on the battlefield, rather than as drivable vehicles. This may end up changing in the future, but for now, the developers have stated that making them functional is just a bit too problematic. Aside from the Technician and the Armadillo, the new Backer build also updated the iconic Crab Queen, with a full set of modular armor mutations. These mutations make her much more durable than she was in Backer Build 1, though it's important to note that this is just one of the possible mutation paths she might follow in the final game. The developers are planning to include dozens of different types of modular mutations for every enemy in the game, as shown in this promotional shot featuring numerous possible versions of the Kairon. While the Crab Queen featured in Backer Build 2 is focused entirely on defensive mutations, they'll also feature numerous other types of mutations in the final game, including several that are designed to capture or even outright obliterate the player's soldiers. If you'd like to know more about Backer Build 2, then I'll include a few relevant links in the comments section below. You can also still get access to the latest Backer build by pre-ordering the game on Snapshot Games' official website. Just make sure you're ordering the Luxury Digital Edition or higher. Next, the briefing number 5 was released back in mid-June. Now, I've already started analyzing the new stories in my Fiction of Phoenix Point series, but suffice to say, this new collection gave us numerous new details about the Sanhedrian faction. You can get access to all of the currently available briefings by signing up for the official newsletter over on the Phoenix Point website. Or if you prefer to hear me ramble on about them, then feel free to check out some of my other videos. I'll leave a few links down below. Now that the briefing number 5 has come out, there's just one more to go. The briefing number 6, which will finally shed some more light on the mysterious Phoenix Project. Although we know very little about what the final briefing will reveal, Alan Stroud has teased us with some very minor reveals, such as implying that it will include a story about Randolph Syme's funeral. Alan has also been mentioning a writing competition with increasing frequency over the past few weeks. Again, details are scarce, but apparently it will allow fans to submit their own short stories set in the Phoenix Point universe, with the winning submission being added to the list of official fiction. We can probably expect to see more details about that around the same time that the briefing number 6 is scheduled to come out. Next up, on June 10th, Snapshot Games made a major announcement, revealing that Phoenix Point will be coming to the Xbox One. The official reveal was made at E3, and while the announcement was received well by some fans, there was a bit of pushback from others. In response to this, both Julian Gollop and Kevin Hill were quick to clarify several key points about the agreement between Snapshot Games and Microsoft. They stressed that Microsoft was not taking over as a publisher and had no influence on how the game will be developed. Rather, Microsoft simply liked their current vision for the game and wanted to include it as one of the titles offered through their new Game Pass system. Since Windows 10 and Xbox One use very similar operating systems, and Phoenix Point was already being designed with controllers in mind, it shouldn't cause any significant delay in the game's development. Phoenix Point is still scheduled for release in June of 2019, and will see simultaneous release across both platforms. Now, that covers all the major news about Phoenix Point, but we're far from done. Like I said, June was a pretty busy month, and Snapshot Games community manager was working overtime, teasing us with all sorts of new concept images. For example, Kevin Hill shared these new concept renders on June 25th. Not only does this seem to confirm that shotguns will be included in Phoenix Point, but it may also imply that weapons will have modular accessories, since one of these renders appears to be sporting a serrated barrel. Both of these shotguns also appear to be decorated with Phoenix Project colors, meaning that it's likely intended to go with the newly textured Phoenix Project Assault Trooper that Kevin also shared with us on June 5th. Of course, it's important to remember that this particular assault soldier is just a base model. In the final game, the player will be able to adjust their soldier's appearance with different types of equipment or cosmetic customizations. And while we're on the subject of equipment, the Snapshot team also revealed this render in the official update released on June 20th. The chitin armor was originally shown as concept art during the original crowdfunding campaign on Fig, as part of the Alien Living Weapon and Armor DLC pack. This special DLC will be free to anyone who backed or pre-ordered the game at the luxury digital tier or higher, but it will also be made available for purchase at some point after the game comes out next year. Next, Julian Gollop has recently started sharing several new details about what he has planned for the game's class, geoscape, and research mechanics. This new information is due in large part to a recent interview he had with Pantera Nera over on RPG Codex. I don't want to spoil the entire interview, but I'll at least touch on the highlights. If you want to see all the gory details, then I encourage you to go check out the full interview on RPG Codex. As usual, I'll include a link in the comment section below. Now, first up, Julian Gollop spent some time talking about the game's soldier management system, most notably revealing multiple new classes. He mentioned that the Phoenix Project will have an exclusive multi-skilled class known as the Operative, and he also mentioned that the Disciples of Anu will have access to 3 exclusive classes: the Berserker, the Mutog Handler, which may actually be called the Beastmaster, and the Priest. The Priest is a particularly interesting reveal, because that's a class that was hinted at all the way back in April of last year. Not only did Julian Gollop mention it during a very early interview with Unstable Voltage, but it was also shown in a very early piece of concept art, originally identified as the Shaman. This brings the official list of known classes up to 9 so far, including the Assault, the Sniper, the Heavy, the Technician, the Infiltrator, and the 4 newly revealed classes. While many of these classes will be exclusive to specific factions, the player will be able to gain access to all of them through either Diplomacy, Subterfuge, or Violence. Every class will come with its own set of skill trees, which characters can slowly unlock as they gain new levels. It's interesting to note that as the player unlocks new classes, these classes will become available to everyone on their roster, and individual characters will be able to train in multiple classes at a time, giving them access to a wider variety of different skill trees. Julian also mentioned that soldiers will have at least 2 attributes, Endurance and Willpower, though he clarified that there will be other attributes as well. These attributes won't increase through use, like they did in the original XCOM, but will instead automatically improve as the character levels up. However, the player will be able to influence how a character's attributes increase by building certain types of training facilities, in whatever base those characters happen to be stationed at. Speaking of which, Julian has also generously shared several new details about what he has planned for the game's Geoscape and research systems. For example, he mentioned that the Geoscape will be populated with numerous points of interest, including things like havens, scavenging sites, alien structures, and even abandoned Phoenix bases. Some of these points of interest will be automatically detected if they're within a certain radius of the player's bases or friendly havens, but the player might also reveal more distant points of interest through the use of certain missions or special types of technology. New points of interest may also end up appearing over time, based on special actions taken by NPC factions, or as a result of randomized special events. Julian Gollop also confirmed that NPC factions will construct vehicles which will be used to transport goods and personnel between their havens on the world map. The player will be able to see these vehicles moving around on the map, allowing them to potentially track what the different factions are doing. Unfortunately, Julian also confirmed that there are currently no plans to allow the player to intercept or otherwise interact with those vehicles. In regards to the game's planned research system, Julian revealed that there will be 5 different research trees, each of which is essentially dedicated to one of the game's 5 main factions: New Jericho, Synedrion, the Disciples of Anu, the Phoenix Project, and the Pandora virus itself. Gaining access to new research and technology from the human-run factions is relatively simple, with new projects unlocking as the player trades, steals, or violently seizes the appropriate resources from the faction in question. Things get a little more complicated with the other 2 research trees. Unlocking new Phoenix Project research requires locating additional Phoenix bases, each of which will contain lost parts of the organization's Phoenix archives. Researching the Pandora virus will require a much more hands-on approach, with new projects unlocking as the player recovers and researches items related to the Pandora virus. This includes parts recovered from defeated mutants, as well as living mutants, which will have to be incapacitated with non-lethal weaponry and then held in specialized containment facilities. Julian Gollop even mentioned that the player will also be able to use similar techniques to capture and interrogate human opponents. As the player unlocks new research, they'll also gain access to new hybrid research projects, which will allow them to combine what they've learned from the different factions into strange new technologies. That finally brings us to what may very well be the most exciting part of our latest batch of updates: the newly revealed monster concepts. Throughout June and early July, the developers have teased us with 5 of the monsters that they're currently working on. First up, we have these new renders of the Juggernaut, a brand new mutant that's intended to serve as heavy support on the battlefield. These massive brutes appear to be made up of some sort of cords or tubes, with a large orifice in the middle of their chest. While the developers are keeping most of their abilities under wraps, Julian Gollop did mention that they can spawn another type of smaller mutant known as the Fireworm. We know almost nothing about these fireworms, but it seems likely that they're based on the bearded fireworm, a real type of marine bristleworm found in the Atlantic Ocean. These centipede-like creatures are voracious predators that use a powerful neurotoxin to sicken and disorient their prey. Then we have this new concept art for the Siren, a mutant which has actually been around since the original crowdfunding pitch on Fig. This creepy crawler has gotten a serious makeover since its original concept render, now resembling a faceless, scythe-armed centipede rather than the nightmarish human flytrap portrayed in the original concept art. Next, we've got this brand new textured render of the Mutog, a creature that we've been hearing an awful lot about over the past few months. This mutant seems to be a monstrous hybrid of a dog and an anglerfish, deliberately bred by the Disciples of Anu as one of the possible creatures that can be directed on the battlefield by their elite Beastmaster class. Lastly, we have this, a new concept render of the Pianist, another mutant from the early days of the crowdfunding campaign. Originally appearing in an image that was part of the very first press kit, this creature was described as a mutant with the ability to control minds. It's actually a very pleasant surprise to see the developers moving forward with this early concept, because it gives us hope that some of the other early concepts, such as the Worm or Fat One, may still end up making it into the final game. Now, that officially catches us up with the latest batch of news about Phoenix Point. Like I said, things have been pretty eventful over the past few weeks. It is going to be a while before we get our hands on Backer Build 3 or the briefing number 6, but hopefully the developers will still have all sorts of new concept art and gameplay teasers to share with us until then. This is RetconRaider, signing off. Thanks for listening. Oh, and remember, Although I do love talking about Phoenix Point, you can find out more about the game by visiting the official website, the Facebook page, the YouTube page, the subreddit, the official Discord channel, or the original crowdfunding campaign over on Fig. As always, links are in the description.